Let's talk about poop. We're here today with nutritionist Sarah Greenfield. This is the Integrative ColLaboratory, and we're going to talk about poop. So, is your poop actually important?
Very good question. Something I get all the time, and it is. And I love talking about poop because I believe that it's the window to our health. So that's something that we can look at on a daily basis that actually gives us insight into what's going on internally in our body. If you think about that, it's pretty crazy. There's not many things that we can actually see internally into our body. I mean, we can get blood work, we can get our urine and saliva tested, but poop is something that we do every day, and it's something that we can look at.
We should probably talk about it more, right?
Yes, and that's why I love talking about it, because I see people, so it's really interesting. I see people kind of do one of two things. One person will be like, oh yeah, like I was constipated, or I had diarrhea, or my poop looked like this. And I'm like, great. And then the other person will be like horrified, or like I'll show a picture and they'll do like one of these, but like this. So it's like everybody's interested. We all do it. It's part of life, and it really does give insight into what's going on internally in your body.
And what should it look like? What would be normal poop?
Normal poop. This is a good one. I should have brought my Play-Doh models.
Oh, next time.
Next time I'll have more props. But ideally you want your poop to be brown, somewhere on that spectrum. You want it to be well formed, but not too hard. So if you start to see like little pellets, or if it's kind of almost like very hard and lumpy, that can mean you're not drinking enough water, you're not getting enough fiber. We want to look into like what's going on there. If you're not eliminating on a daily basis, that's a problem. That's our main detoxification system. You look at, okay, your liver, your GI tract, those are the ways that we eliminate things that are harmful to our body. And if we're all stopped up and our poop is really hard, then we're not effectively eliminating. So ideally well-formed, soft, but then on the other side of that spectrum, if you have kind of jagged, rough edges, or if it, when you flush, falls apart, or if it's loose, that can also be an issue. What I see when that's happening is usually there's some type of underlying food sensitivity, food allergy, again, maybe not getting the right type of balance in your diet, not enough fiber, things like that. So diarrhea for a long period of time is something that's a big problem, because that can lead to malabsorption. Sometimes I see that linked to parasites. So we just want to stay on top of monitoring what our poop looks like. So you asked me what it should look like. Brown, well-formed.
Agreed. And I heard a great analogy once, and this is what I use with my patients, and I say it should look something like soft serve ice cream. So not too liquidy, but still formed and soft. So that's usually what I say.
Sometimes people will say like it should be like an S shape in the toilet, which is great. Another question I get a lot is, how many times should I be wiping? What's the ideal wipe amount? And you know, there's that elusive like no wipe poop, which is always like something everyone gets really excited about. But I think, again, when you're thinking about like wiping, again, if it's well formed, it shouldn't be a really messy cleanup, for lack of a better term. But ideally you want to have a couple wipes, maybe the no wipe, and be good to go.
In pediatrics, we talk about poop all the time. I imagine you do too, as a nutritionist with your patients. And how do you find that there are differences between what you talk about with your patients and maybe what their physicians talk about?
Well, I don't know as an adult if many physicians are actually talking about poop. I would actually probably say none are talking about poop. So when I start talking about poop, it is exciting and uncomfortable for someone, but usually people want to talk about it. So once you break the ice, or like maybe I'll make like a poop joke, and then all of a sudden it's like, haha, we can talk about poop, or I'll tell them an experience I've had, and it just opens it up. And then there's a lot of insight and learning that can come from that. And when you start thinking about your health, and especially as a nutritionist, and thinking, all right, how do we impact and change health? It is about connecting to your body. So you need to understand how it's working, when you're hungry, how you feel. If you get irritated, that can be linked to blood sugar. So just this concept of, okay, my body's giving me signals. I mean, going to the bathroom is an obvious one, but there's other internal cues that we can be aware of. So it just kind of sets the tone for a bigger conversation about your body.
Right. And if somebody, can't come see you, but they're really concerned about their poop in terms of maybe hard poops, constipation, what do you recommend as some of the first steps for them that they can do at home on their own without seeing a nutritionist? And then when would you want them to come see their physician or a nutritionist?
Good question. So typically I always say, are you eating enough vegetables? That's like kind of first and foremost, along with water. So if you look at your diet and you're like, well, I don't really get a lot of veggies, you're probably not getting adequate fiber, you're not getting adequate hydration, that's going to have a big impact on the consistency of your poop. It's going to make you more constipated if you're not getting enough. So looking at fiber sources, vegetables, water intake, really important. Are you moving? Sometimes if you just do a little bit of yoga or if you start walking or running, that can help get things going.
Mm-hmm.
It helps actually increase transit time just a little bit so that there's more water in your poop, and that helps you go to the bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
Really important. Those are just some easy things. Sometimes I will say trying some like magnesium can help get things going. So you can try
Mm-hmm.
different forms of magnesium. I usually like citrate or oxide. Those are really great for helping go to the bathroom. When I would say to come see someone is if you've tried different tactics and you still find that you're not going on a daily basis. I really like to stress once a day is fine. Some people will go every time after they eat, which is great as long as it's well formed. But if you're finding that you're backed up, if you're starting to get skin rashes or breaking out, sometimes I see constipation and acne very linked, or if you're feeling like low energy because you're not going to the bathroom, that's when I would start to kind of dive into it a little bit further and work with someone.
Great. I mean, that's a lot of what I do with my patients and my kids in the integrative pediatric world. And I think there are, I mean, obviously everybody knows there's a lot of medications that you can take, Miralax being the most common, but it's not really a great solution. You have to figure out what the root cause is and why we are constipated. And there are so many things that you can do, from what you're saying, magnesium. So magnesium is a great supplement. That definitely helps you go to the bathroom. People, we want to get them kids eating more fiber. We want to get them having more water. You can do teas. Chamomile tea can be really helpful and soothing to the intestines. There's belly massage. Some people go to chiropractic and they get adjustments. You can do acupuncture. There's so many things that you can do besides just taking Miralax or another medication. And sometimes you do need those, and that's fine. But there's a lot of other options and other things to think about. And even if you are taking the medication, it's really important that you work with your physician, your naturopath, your nutritionist, whoever you're working with on your bowel movements, to make sure that they're looking into the root cause and not just treating it, because you're never really going to fix the constipation problems if you don't get to why you're having it in the first place.
And you know what's interesting too that I've seen is there's a psychological link between your mind and your gut. I mean, it's always talking, it's always communicating, and I find sometimes people with constipation that won't resolve, they have some, I don't want to say issues, but there's things with control. And like, I had a client that was so constipated, and one time she said to me, like right before she left, she was like, you know, I have a really hard time letting go of things. And I was like, huh. Maybe that's related. So there is this whole mind-gut connection. Yeah, it's really fascinating to see that actually happen in practice, where you're like, wow, the mind is extremely powerful. Mm-hmm. And when you have, you know, just things where you're holding on to stuff, where you just feel like you have to control everything, sometimes that can actually be expressed in your gut. Mm-hmm. So I spend a lot of time also working just with stress management and just your mind thought and mindfulness around your lifestyle and your health.
And it's also very interesting when you start to learn a little bit about Ayurveda, Indian medicine, or Chinese medicine. Everything starts with the root, and the root being your bowel movements, the bottom of your body, basically. And so if you don't have your elimination working properly, then everything else backs up, and you have problems everywhere else. And that's their theory, and that's just something that's been they've thought of for thousands and thousands of years. And it makes logical sense that you want to work your way back from elimination up, and that's not something new. But I think we're just really, with functional medicine, starting to come back to that and come back to the root cause, and it aligns with these ancient traditions, which is interesting.
It is.
Because, you know, maybe there's a little bit more to that than we would think.
I think there's so much. If you look back into rich cultures, what they're doing to heal the body, there's so much. Now that we go back and actually apply science to it, there's so much science there. Like, I mean, I grew up Jewish, and whenever I was sick, it was chicken soup. Mm-hmm. And now, having studied more of the functional space and learning more about collagen and the benefits of collagen, it's like, oh, well, that's why I was having chicken soup, and that's why it was making me feel better. And it's like, you know, it's so fascinating when you start to see the cultural impact and how it actually has this very grounded in science, whether or not that was the intention or understood.
It is so fascinating. And what people forget, and I know you know this, but chicken soup today is very different than chicken soup was back then. And there's a big difference between getting, you know, Campbell's chicken soup in a can versus having your mom or grandma put a, you know, whole chicken in a soup, and it's basically bone broth at that point. And we know that bone broth is one of the most healing things that you can do for your gut. So it's just interesting that these, you know, old wives' tales, the things that used to be done, if you study them with science now, it actually makes a lot of sense. But we just have to go back to our roots and go back to what actually chicken soup was, and as opposed to just maybe these canned products with pesticides and so forth.
Yeah.
A little different.
It's like sometimes it's like looking at just how do we simplify and get back to what was more natural and simple. And there's a lot of value, and so that's always like when I step back. So I'll go to a conference. I'll do more continuing education and fill my head with so much cool information. But what does it always come back to? Eat more vegetables, eat more simple, do things that decrease stress. It's like those are the foundations, and when you're not doing that, you throw your whole body out of balance, and then we see all of this autoimmune response type things. We see so many imbalances, and it's like we got to bring people back and just say, like, cook a chicken. At the end of the day, cook a chicken,
exactly.
Eat a cucumber, and like, you're good.
I couldn't agree more. Well, thank you so much for being on the Integrative ColLaboratory. Why don't you tell people how to get a hold of you if they would like a functional nutritional consult with you?
Yeah, so you can find me at fearlessfig.com. I'm also a practitioner here at the Integrative Pediatric Wellness Center. So please come in and visit. And my email is sarah@fearlessfig. And I look forward to connecting with you. If you have any questions, don't ever hesitate to reach out and ask.
Yeah, if you're looking for a visit, pediatric nutrition, we have Ayurveda doctors here, we have a naturopath, so just give us a shout, give us a phone call, or find us online at integrativepediatricsandmedicine.com, and we're all on the website.
Yeah.
All right, have a great rest of the day. Thanks.